good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are, and welcome to today's webinar. Pleased to have you on board with us on our session on maximising warehouse productivity. Today I'm joined by Jason Wanby from Vexo. Very pleased to have him discuss this key issue for a lot of us in terms of how we really boost warehouse efficiency. Jason is the founder and director of Vexo, a warehouse management system that Kilimanjaro has been pleased to partner with over the last few years, and we've seen some great successes with many of our joint clients. Really looking forward to hearing this session, and I trust that you take some good content away from it today. Without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to Jason. Jason, welcome, and let's kick off with the agenda.
Thanks, Steve. And thanks to everybody for taking the time out to come to this webinar. I do hope that we'll provide some practical advice that you can take away to apply to your warehouse operations. Now, there's a lot to warehousing, as probably most of you know, and we could really spend hours going through all the different elements that we could use. So we don't have hours. So what I'm going to focus on is what I consider to be the three main pillars, if you like, of an efficient and harmonious warehouse. So the first things we're going to talk about are improving accuracy in your inventory. Then we're going to cover how you can introduce efficiencies into your supply chain through efficient pick phase replenishment and optimizing your pick pack strategies. Finally, we'll have a look at how you might harness a warehouse management software, transport management software package. And I do warn you, there is a shameless plug involved in that. Let's start with inventory accuracy. And when I say inventory accuracy, I'm talking about two elements that go hand in hand. I'm talking about accuracy in stock levels, so that's the correct quantity of the correct item in the correct location, and accuracy in supply, so that's the right quantity of the right product to the right customer, and they both work together. I probably don't need to talk about the main benefits of accuracy, but the main benefits of accuracy are obviously you can find the product in the warehouse. So if you've got supply overflow locations, then you know where to go and get it. Your product peak phase is correct, so your replenishment plans work better. Everything works better. It also gives confidence to your salespeople, because if they're confident that in the levels in the warehouse, then they're confident to promise to the customer, and they will reduce the number of calls where they'll phone up to say, can you just check that product because I'm not sure, it seems a bit low. Obviously, it improves your customer satisfaction. If you deliver what you say to your customer, then they're less likely to look at any of your suppliers, and often reliability is more important than price. And also it improves internal team relations. In an inefficient supply chain, there's a lot of friction between customer service and sales and warehouse and finger pointing and all that kind of stuff. Let's look at ways that we can improve the accuracy or keep the inventory accurate, because it's an ongoing battle. So firstly, let's start with goods receipt, which I consider to be the most important, because if you receive inaccurately, then you've lost the battle at the first hurdle, and all I can guarantee you is that your stock will not be correct for the rest of the time. So you make sure, a good strategy is to make sure that your most fastidious and the people with the best attention to detail that you rely on are in that receiving team, to make sure that they check everything, check the quality, check the quantities, confirm it's the right product. It may take slightly longer, but it's definitely worth it in the long run. The second one would be your stock checking strategies. So we're talking about, there's different types of stock checking. Of course, there's a stock take or a cyclical stock take where you shut the warehouse down and people walk around with the paper and count it, bring it back, you go through the check-in process, etc. And that's good for end of year kind of stock takes. But I think you should have a more ad hoc approach as well. So when I say ad hoc checks, I mean things that are prescribed. So you might have classes of inventories. So for example, if you sell diamond rings and you sell matchboxes, I would assume that you would want to check the diamond rings quite regularly, like every day, whereas you wouldn't need to check the matchboxes for until 6 months time. So you can prescribe them that way. And then there's user generated checks. So through any warehouse operation, there are times where the operator will identify that something's incorrect. One of the most common ones, of course, is when they're picking. So when they're picking the goods, they'll go to the pick face. If it's printed on the sheet, what should be there, or if it's on the screen of the mobile device that you're using, and it's not correct, then they should be able to just request, say, can you please check that because it seems incorrect, and then that should be a process within your warehouse. And then finally, of course, accurate pick and pack. So what we talk about there is getting the right product. So if we're sending the right product out, then everything that was remaining is correct as well. So how we can do that? Well, obviously we can have a checking plan, and a lot of people do that where they'll print a piece of paper off, they'll walk around, someone will walk around and pick it, they'll bring it back to a packing bench, and then there will be a supervisor or a second user that will check it, and they sign the form, which kind of just gives them a little bit of responsibility and ownership because they're signing it. You can monitor and track customer credits, so you should be able to, you should categorize the credits for the reasons and look for who touched that order and look for patterns and put KPI plans in place so that you can see if you've got particular products, particular people, particular shifts that are contributing to the credits. And then you can implement scanning technologies, obviously, which would allow you to scan the product and it'll tell you if it's not the right thing. So there's different strategies that you can use there. The next part of the efficiency is that when the people walk around the warehouse to do the picking, that the product is on the shelf and they don't have to stop and work. So we want to be efficient to get the picking process. It's all about layering the levels, I suppose, layering the processes within your warehouse. If a picker comes along and they have to stop because there's not stock there, then they have to stop. They probably need to find a forklift or somebody that can drive a forklift to go and bring the product down and carry on. So we need to look at ways that we can improve this. So we need some strategies. Okay, so first of all, I think you plan your replenishment. So in an efficient warehouse, you try to, where possible, have replenishments at the beginning or the end of the shift. Right. So if you do it at the start of the day, obviously you've got more information for what you need to do today because you've had yesterday's and overnight orders come in, and people are fresher and more happy and jovial. So the work gets done for the day, and then you do the day's work. Or you can do it at the end of the day where you've picked everything you need. Someone goes around and brings it down. That makes the morning more efficient. So if you've got trucks that are going out at, say, 9 o'clock and you need to really get on with it, then that might be the strategy for you. And then obviously there are others, larger operations which might run shifts, or they might have 24-hour days, 7 days a week operations. And those ones, it's obviously appropriate to look for triggers during the day. So have regular checks of what needs to be replenished. As a side note with the replenishment, if you've got products that are very, very fast moving, you might consider allocating a double deep rack if you've got it, or multiple big faces. You might put 2 or 3 pallet spaces in there for that particular product to reduce the number of times you have to visit it. And then we need to prioritize the replenishment. So not all replenishments are equal. For example, if you were replenished by site and someone walks around, it's reasonably common, I suppose. People walk around and go, oh, I need to replenish that. Well, it might not be as efficient as you think, because you might have an item that's got 3 boxes in the pick face and you think, I've got to replenish that. But if you only sell 1 box a week, it's not really that urgent. Whereas you might have a product with 2 layers on it and you think, I'm not going to bother with that, but you sell 3 layers a day. So that's probably more important to replenish. So you've got a few inputs for determining what you need to prioritize. So the first one would be, well, what have I got to do right now? What is on the pick slips or pick slips that are coming through or on the device that I need to do? Have I got enough to fulfill my current requirements? And if I haven't, then those are the priority replenishments we should be doing. Another option would be to use average daily sales. So if you've got products that are very consistent, or you can in some way seasonally or whatever determine what you expect to sell of that product, then you could use, okay, we sell 10 a day and I want to have at least 3 days stock in the pick face, so tell me to replenish it when it drops below 30. That can be an automated calculation based on, it should be something that you can work with your IT or your WMS to make sure that that's set. Then, of course, there's just the normal min-max levels where if it drops to a certain level, it'll trigger a replenishment request, and then somebody needs to go and replenish it. But of course, some things need to replenish, but you can't replenish them at that point. So, for example, you haven't got the stock, you've got no overflow stock. There's no point telling someone to replenish a product if there is no overflow stock in the system. So when you receive it, that's another option for you to replenish at that point. So as soon as you get the goods, it should say, hey, we need to replenish the pick phase. So put this in the pick phase first. And then that will make sure that that happens during the day. So that should be an instruction for the receipt as well. Okay, so that's getting the replenishment in place. So far we've got accurate stock and it's sitting on the in the pick phase. So we're ready to go. We want to get the important stuff done, which is getting it to the customers. I mean, that's what we're there for, and we don't make any money unless we do it. So I'm going to cover a few elements of the transform fulfillment. Warehouse zoning, for example, it's a smaller audience. Obviously, I realize a lot of you, it's irrelevant, but it is an important consideration. And there are situations in even a small warehouse where you might do that. Product pick faces, this is where a location is located rather than the previous replenishments. Picking workflow, so this is how we prepare the order. What's the workflow of picking, packing, checking, etc. Pick strategies, that's sort of a higher thing, like how do we consolidate orders for picking, it's like wave picking, etc. And then finally, we'll look at dispatching. Once we've prepared the order, how do we efficiently get it to the customer, and what are the options for sending it to the customer? So those are the areas that I'm going to cover in this area. And just a reminder that there is a Q&A button at the bottom if you want to ask any questions along the way. Just put them in if you want to. If you think of something on the way, we'll try and answer it afterwards. So warehouse zoning and why might you do it? Well, the obvious one would be you've got different temperature zones or specific areas, sheds, for example. So, for example, you've got a freezer and a chiller and a dry stores, and you've got different teams working in each. Then what it allows you to do is separate the order into 3 picks. One that goes to the freezer, one that goes to the high rise, and one that goes to the chiller. And then the orders will sort of come back together at the end. You might also consider it if you've just got a very, very large warehouse. So it's like, a few hundred meters long, you might zone it into sections. And then the final one would be if you've got to use a specific machine in order to pick that up. So you might have a high-rise stock picking where you need a license for a stock picker, for example. Okay, so product pick faces. So you get asked this a lot, is like, how do I make sure where should we put the product in the warehouse? And often the most common thing that people think is, I need to put the fastest moving product closest to the packing bench. So I have to go out of the further away it is, the less I have to go. And that's definitely one of the goals, is that you want to reduce the distance that you walk. But to me, it depends on the product mix and the type of orders that you're doing. A good example of why you might not want to put it there is, so you build better pallets. So if you've got larger palletized orders, let's imagine you're a food service company and you sell tins of beans, cartons of beans, and you sell bags of flour, for example, in sort of like paper bags, effectively. You sell more flour than you do beans, perhaps, but you won't want to pick your flour first because it's closer. You want to pick your beans first because it forms a better base for a pallet. So the type of product, does it form a good base for the pallet? And also, if it's a bag of flour, you don't want to put it on the bottom because it'll destabilize the pallet because it's not an even surface. And also, the cartons that get put on it could puncture the product, which means it could get rejected when it gets to the customer site. So what you put and the order that you put things in is not just as simple as what's the most fast moving product. It's something that you should it's almost like a project to try and work out how to do that. but it's good if you do. Okay, then you've got a pick workflow. So this is actually the activities that happen in the pick rather than the way that we consolidate them. So we're talking about picking, we're talking about packing, we might talk about checking. Common thing you see, so pick only. Well, that's great if you've got a customer collection or there's a rep taking the goods. You don't want to have to go through all the packing process. You just pick it, give it to the person, and off they go. You might collect a POD or something like that. Then you got pick first and pack second. So this is where you've got two teams. You've got a team of pickers and you want to do a check-in step. So packing can act as a check, obviously. So the pickers pick the product, they go and take it to the packing bench, and then somebody takes over, puts it in the box and completes the form, and then it's done. You can do that either, there's two options in packing, of course. There's packing it where you say what's in each box. So you record in box A is some beans and some Vegemite, and in box B is some jam and some cream. So, and then the other one is just to say, I've managed to pack this into this many boxes of this size. So there's a couple of options there. And then you've got picking and packing at the same time. So that's really good if you might have a little trolley that you're pushing around and all your orders tend to go in one single box. That's great for that because you could just put it in the box at the same time. Or you're building pallets and you're walking around building pallets for larger orders. You build the pallet, you shrink wrap the pallet, you label the pallet, and it's finished. So that saves time. So that's how we're going to do it. But how do we want to consolidate the orders? So the most common you would see in most warehouses, single order picking. And I include single order picking. Some people think that taking two pick slips at the same time is wave picking, but it's not. It's just picking two orders at the same time. So single order pickings where each sales order has one or more picks, but related only to that. So that's really good for if you've got large orders that are going on pallets, or if you've got EDI orders. So if you're supplying one of the major supermarkets or one of the major retailers, they will require you to label each box with an SSCC label, and they want to know what's in the box because when it arrives on their site, they want to scan it. So EDI is electronic data exchange, which just means that there's an intermediary. The communication between you and your customer is automated and managed. Picking by location. So that when I say location, I mean where it's going. So you might have a run of orders that are going and you're going to drop it off at a courier depot. You might want to pick all of those together and then label them and then just drop them at the courier depot. Right? Or if your customer has an ERP that doesn't allow them to make changes to their purchase order, so they put in a purchase order, and so you've got one main order, and then you've got a few. Oh, and I forgot to order this orders as well, so you can actually consolidate them by customer. And then the final one is wave picking, which can be very efficient under certain circumstances because it involves you might have 10 orders going to wherever, it doesn't matter. 10 orders, and what you're going to do is you're going to walk around the warehouse once to collect everything that you need for those 10 orders, bring it back to a central area, and then you're going to sort them from that zone. So it's appropriate where well, I think it's best where you're picking where your supply is full cartons or shippers or whatever you want to call them. So you just whatever you receive, you take off the shelf, right? And it's good if they're branded or they're easy to identify, right? So they're not all a brown box with a very small change in writing. And the reason for that is it's got to be easy to differentiate. When it's not appropriate, nuts and bolts, for example, if you're ordering single nuts and bolts and someone wants 28 mil and 26 mil bolts, then that's not going to be appropriate because when you go and put them all on the packing bench, it's going to be very difficult to tell the difference between them. And I certainly can't tell the difference between 6 and 8 mil, but I'm pretty sure it's important when you try and use it. Okay, so then, but a wave picking does require a sorting step. So there's a few options there. You can have a wave pick which triggers other picks, which are like sub picks, where you can do pick and pack from there. That's reasonably common. You can just label them. You can print labels for everything on the wave pick, and you can sort them by that. It'll say a box of orange juice for customer one and a box of apple juice for customer one, and you just put them on the box, and you can sort them on the pallets. And the other one is loading a truck. So you might you might have your own vehicles, and you might have sequence loading. So once you've worked out, you've wave picked for everything for the truck, and you work out what order you're going to deliver it in, and then you load it in reverse delivery order. Okay, so now we've got our boxes and our pallets and our goods, and they're sitting in the dispatch area, and now we need to get them to the customer somehow. So there's three main dispatch methods. Can't think of any others. There's a customer comes and picks it up, in which case you either don't pick it until they arrive because they say they come in but they never turn up, and then you've just wasted your time picking it, or you pick it and you put it in a pigeonhole and record the location of that order, and then when the customer comes and fetches it, you can find it, get a signature, get some cash, whatever you need to do. And then there's courier delivery, which is obviously toll, Star Trek, direct freight, whatever. Or there's delivery, which is your own vehicle fleet. So those are the three ways that you can get the stuff out of the warehouse. Let's talk a little bit more detail about a couple of them. So courier integrations or courier platforms, really. So this is where you sign up for a service, and that service consolidates all the different carriers, and then you've got one place you can say, well, I want to send this here, and it'll tell you, this is the cheapest, this is the fastest, these are the options that will take it. So multi-carrier platforms like Open Freight, who are a freight consolidator, you've got MaxShip, Starship It, and a few others around. Then there's a single carrier. For example, TGE is really, isn't it? Tolls, TGE now. Star Trek, Australia Post, that kind of thing. That is great. That means if you've got a few of those, you have to go to different screens to sign up for them. But it's really good if you've got a sort of an exclusive relationship with one of the carriers where they basically take every single piece of freight. Then you don't need a multi-carrier because you're going to get probably a better rate going straight to the carrier. But the real benefits are when you integrate that to your ERP or to your warehouse management software, because of course, well, it saves time, because you don't have to go to a computer screen necessarily. It can print the labels automatically if possible, and you don't need to have a replication of information. So you've got the information, you've collected the information, you know how big the boxes are, how heavy the pallets are. You should be able to just put that into the ERP and then, into the courier platform, and no one needs to go and retype that in. So ideally, the person finishes the order, and then as they finish the order, the labels print out. It's obviously more efficient because the systems talk to each other, so you don't have to log in. Again, it comes back to going to the computer screen, typing everything in. No need to log in. It's all done for you in the background. So it saves lots of hours a day. It's a very, very big time saver that we see in most warehouses, is the courier side. And finally, there's delivery on your own vehicles, which is great if you have a lot of customers in your own metro area, and you've got vehicles, obviously. It gives you some advantages because you have much more control over when customers receive the goods, and you can respond to time windows. For example, if you've got customers in the CBD precincts, you need to get in there. It's not the most efficient way to go, but you've got to get in there first because you need to get into the pedestrian areas before they get closed off. It means that you can go to customers before they open because you can get keys off them, go and have a key register and get into the place and do that. And of course, you have more control over the quality of the service, and also what information you collect when you go to that customer. So, and you can provide them more information. So just to summarize, you've got control over when you do the delivery, you've got control over the quality of the service that you provide, and you've got more control of the data that you collect. And of course, you can increase visibility with where the drivers are. So if someone phones up and says, "Where's my delivery?" then you can tell them, "Oh, look, according to this, you're next on the list, and he's going to get there about 1:15, whatever," which is great for customer service. And you can also send text messages and things like that. Okay, so again, I'll just say if you've got any questions, don't forget to do the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen, and we'll go on to a warehouse management system and a transport management system and how can it help. Well, it helps in a lot of ways, obviously, but what I'll do is I'll just relate it back to the points that we've covered here, the three pillars, which is in the accuracy. Obviously, it's very easy to move. You've got a mobile device. It's easy to move the stock around in real time. You can scan pallets, you can scan products, you can scan warehouse locations, and it's easy to move, much easier than not moving it, in fact. And obviously, scanning validates the product. If you scan it, you should be able to force people to scan, so that they have to scan the product, they have to scan the location. For replenishment, well, it should calculate set priorities, send notifications to people to say this needs doing, so that you've got the workflow full, so it helps with your workflow. And order fulfillment, obviously, it should allow you to zone your warehouse if you require. It should be able to respond to orders when it receives an order. Looking, do I need to move this down a particular strategy depending on what's in the order? So, for example, you could make a decision to send it to a pallet run based on the volume of the order. You can send it to a different, to the north run depending on its geographical location, or you can specify, oh, this can only go on this courier because it's got class 8 dangerous goods or something like that. It should be integrated with different platforms to make it easier for you. And one, of course, is the courier platforms, but other platforms could be integrated as well. And the transport management system should be able to track and collect PODs, etc. So those are the main things of how one can help. Okay, but again, a WMS is a commitment. It's time, it's money, obviously, and it's resources in your business. So how do you know if you're ready for it? I mean, it's not the easiest project. It shouldn't be very difficult, but it's certainly gonna, you're generally busy as it is. So if you've got high levels of customer credits or customer complaints about the product stock or quality, then I think you should consider it. If you've absolutely got no trust whatsoever in your stock level, so you don't believe what it says, then you probably need a WMS. If you have internal friction, so you get a lot of interdepartmental arguing, or even in-departmental arguing, pickers thinking, oh, that guy's cherry picking orders, or he's not pulling his weight, right? If you can't see that visibility as to who's doing what, then a warehouse management system should be able to tell you who's picking at what rate and which orders they're picking. Or if you've got a Dave, I call him a Dave. He's the guy that is in the warehouse. He's got a little system that's in his head, or he's got a spreadsheet or something, and he knows everything. And if you want to know where anything is, you have to go and ask Dave, right? Which is great. But then Dave goes on holiday, and if no one can find anything, and you get through it, but it's not a pleasant experience. And then Dave, on his last day of holiday in Bali or whatever, he's sitting on his deck chair stressing because he knows when he gets back, he's thinking, what am I going back to? What have they done to my system? And he has to start again. And that's if you've got one of those people, or a couple of people like that, then you're also ready for a WMS, I think. And do you need a TMS? Well, obviously you have to have your own vehicles. So if you haven't got your own vehicles, you're not. Do you get lots of calls? If you have your trucks on the road, do you get lots of phone calls saying, where's the guy? He said he was supposed to be here. He phoned me and said I was going to be here between 11:30 and 12, and it's now 3:30 and he's not here. Or if you have like a milk run scenario, so that's where you've got set customers on set days in set order. It can really help by just automatically slotting the jobs onto those vehicles in the right order, and just saves a lot of time. Okay, shameless plug time. So one of the systems I think you should consider would be a Vexo. Look, we've developed a platform. It's modern, it's reliable, it's scalable, it does all the things that a warehouse management system should do. We've got customers with 5 users, and we've got customers with more than 200 users. It's very easy to learn. So we built it around a very large warehouse with more than 200 people, where you've got a lot of people, a lot of temps, you've got a lot of transitioning people coming in and going out of the business. So we've made it very easy to use, and we think it looks pretty good too. It's very, very nice, pleasant interface to work with. So why is it modern? Well, we could go into the background technologies, but what really would matter to you is that, well, firstly, everyone's on the same platform. So we don't install a Vexo for you. We install a Vexo, and then we give you access to a Vexo. We do lots of small incremental updates. So we add features all the time. Everybody gets access to all the features that we add, and you get access. And we do releases at least once a month, probably once a fortnight. Once we deploy new features and fixes, they're obviously fixed for everybody at the same time. In the last 2 years, we've gone through a process of rewriting of Vexo. So we started in 2010, and look, what you learn in 12 years and how technology comes along means that you have to adapt. And what we've done is we thought, well, there's things that we would have done differently had we known about that in 2010, and we would have used this technology if we'd have known that it was available. So what we've done is we've rewritten it with the technological advances of serverless technologies, and we've gone back and put a very strong engine under our inventory management. So, and finally, and also our apps available on Android and iOS. So you can download it from Google Store, Google Play, or you can download it from the App Store on any device. It's a single system. So when we rewrote it, we realized that transport and warehouse management go pretty much hand in hand. So in fact, whether you use the transport management is technically actually controlled by 3 switches in your service. And finally, it's a low cost of entry. So one of the things that we've learned in the last that's come on board in the last 3 or 4 years really is the ability to use a phone camera to scan all types of barcodes, or I say most types of barcodes. So it can do the brown box barcodes, it can do 2D, and it can do 1D, all using the camera of your phone. You can still go and purchase Zebra scanners if you wanted to, Android scanners to work with the Vexo, but certainly you can use your own camera if you want. So look, that's enough of the plugin. This is a webinar about what I consider to be the most important fundamentals of an efficient warehouse, and much of the advice that we've given can be applied to paper as well as to it can be applied right now to paper rather than just having a WMS system. So I do hope that you got something out of it. So what I'll do is I'll hand you back to Stephen, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions. And thanks for taking the time to listen. Thank you.
Fantastic. That's great, Jason. If you do have any final questions, please just do use that Q&A button. But it is the last call. We've got a few questions here to run through, Jason. So let me start with Trevor's question here. They currently run MYB Exo and have stock locations already set up within Exo fields. How long approximately would it take to integrate, and how does the Vexo integrate with SmartFreight?
4 weeks, 4 to 8 weeks, I suppose, depending. These are just a good indication. And look, we don't integrate with SmartFreight, but we would integrate with SmartFreight. What we do is we integrate with the multi-carrier platforms as we need to. So SmartFreight's just one that we've not bothered doing yet because it's not come up. Most people have MaxShip or Starship it or whatever. So IFS is
OpenFreight.
OpenFreight, yeah. Sorry, OpenFreight, yeah.
Just maybe just expand on that, Jason. So I think probably if it's a single warehouse location, that's sort of 6 to 8 weeks is probably reasonable. If you're running more than one warehouse location, you need to look at how you roll out the warehouse management system across those locations. So there is some additional complexity because you do need, DA transfers potentially set up. And it's also a question of whether you're using work orders and some of those sorts of things. But the Vexo Exo interface does support sales orders, jobs within job costing, DA transfers, work orders, all of those sorts of transactions.
Yeah.
All right, fantastic. And maybe just talk through how a Vexo typically does integrate with a warehouse management system. So in terms of what the user sees in terms of that process.
Sorry, I missed the first bit. In terms of a courier platform, did you say?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, there's three things I'm going to talk about here. The first one is that you prescribe what service you want to send it on. So sometimes you might say, a customer might say, I've got to send this on TGE or whatever. So we get told what we've got to do it. The second one is that you specify the cheapest. And what happens there is when you finish the order, without you doing anything, we go to Open Freight, let's just say Open Freight for the examples. Go to Open Freight, say we want to send this from here to there. This is what we're sending. These are the DGs, and they respond with some selection of options. We just choose the cheapest one, and then we just consign it. Right, that's the cheapest option. The third one is a quote system. So what that does is, so in a Vexo, you pick it and you pack it. It goes into a consign queue, and then somebody on the device, so they see on the device, it comes up. It says this is where we're sending it. This is the special instructions. These are the packages we're sending. And there's a button to say press quote, and that quote button will go to whichever system or systems that you're integrated with, and it will say, we'll do the same thing. It will ask what do, and then it will present the different options available, and with prices and also estimated delivery dates. And then the cheapest is at the top, and then the person can scroll through. The second one might be $1 more expensive, but get there a day earlier. So they might go, well, I'm going to send it on that one for better customer service. So everything's on the device, and then basically the labels will just print out at the closest printer to you, and then you just stick it on a box and put it by the door.
That's great, Jason. I think the key thing here is just how much efficiency that brings. The typical warehouse does have, you've got users entering things into the ERP system. You've got picking slips going between the warehouse and the customer service team. You have the warehouse supervisor using one or multiple freight management portals, and it just removes that friction in terms of those processes.
Well, I mean, technically, the person finishes an order, the next order's already there. The salesperson in the order, it's appeared automatically. They pick up the order. They don't have to go to a tray or a printer. They walk around and get the goods. They put it in a box. They press print. They press the complete or whatever, and the labels print out straight away. They put it on the box, put it by the door. So, you're saving tens of hours a day potentially of people walking around. I mean, we've seen one that we did. They used to do what you were talked about. They'd have a pick slip. They'd manually write on what they did. They'd put it in a tray. Someone would come downstairs. They'd put the box. They'd write the name on the box, put it by the door on one side of the door. Then someone would go upstairs, type it into Starship it, press print. The labels would print downstairs. They had one person that just waited for those labels, tried to find the box that matched the name, put the labels on the box, took it and put it in a cage at the other side of the dock area, waiting for the courier. And now everything happens within like seconds of them finishing. Nobody has to do all that anymore. So they basically saved, it wasn't even that big a warehouse. Maybe they do 250 orders a day kind of a thing. But they got rid of, they didn't need an extra person. That person could be redeployed to do something else, and probably saved one or two people in the warehouse as well. I can't tell you, because that customer doubled in size overnight, basically through COVID. So they went from 150 orders to 300 orders basically overnight.
That's a good problem to have. It's a good problem to have. Now, there is a question here from Michelle. Yes, we have recorded this session. We're making the recording available after the webinar. So you can look forward to receiving that in your inbox. Another question here, Jason.
Mm-hmm.
How do we know if we're ready to move from that paper-based system to a WMS system, to a warehouse management system?
Look, I think I mentioned a few of the things in the warehouse. I mean, look, if you feel like you've not got control of the system, if you don't know what people are doing, you've got enough going on, you've got, say, 10 pickers or something, and you don't know what's happening. You think that Pete's having a kip down the back for an hour every day, but you can't tell because you can't, It's only anecdotal. If you think that people are cherry picking orders, they go to the tray and they go, "I'm not doing that one. I'll have this one." Right? If you so basically, if you've got a warehouse, I think it's something to consider. Maybe not if there's just one person in the warehouse. I don't think that's it. But if you've got a reasonable sized warehouse operation, and you want to be as efficient as possible, it's amazing when people see that we've got a little dashboard thing that tells you who's doing what, how quickly. It's astonishing how much that the performance improves as soon as that's on a screen in the warehouse. So look, I think I mentioned, you can have, if you can't rely on your stock levels, if you've got one person that knows everything, and it's not a very good place to be, or if you've got concerns about performance within the warehouse, then I think that's the main thing. Internal friction.
Yeah, I think there's some great points there, Jason. I think for any sort of inventory distribution business, often that warehouse can be this sort of black box of what happens in there, and you've got customer service kind of sometimes fighting to kind of manage what's going out in the warehouse. And the reality is, as a KPI, that cost per pick is one of the key things we need to manage. If you're using paper-based systems, it's very hard to manage your cost per pick, let alone know your cost per pick. If you're focusing on that as a strategy, a warehouse management system really can just help drive that transparency around costs and how we can actually start to reduce those costs.
Well, I can give you an example of that. I mean, this is actually the first site that we did, which is a large food service company. They had a night shift, and the night shift basically had 2 hours per person overshift time. There were like 20 people on the night shift. And they said, well, we need that extra 2 hours because we can't get through it. It's too much work to do. So when we put a Vexo in and we watched it, we didn't say anything, but we track all the activities that happen through the day, obviously. And what we found, we left it for a month, I think, or they left it for a month. But what we found is they started at 7 o'clock, and then about 11 o'clock at night, these were loading trucks. There was a 2 hour period where very little happened. And then they ramped it back up again. So they went to them and said, well, you say that, but because obviously, they said, well, you don't do anything during those times. So we're going to shift the start time of the shift back by 2 hours. And they saved 2 hours overtime over 20 people, which is obviously a significant saving. They also, ironically, on top of that, saved people, because as soon as people realized that Big Brother was watching, let's call it, they either left or they got better. Because he realized that some people, he was very clear who was picking and who was not. So,
yep. No, that's great. We've got another question here. When receiving in stock, and specifically containers into Exo, would that typically be done through a Vexo or through Exo itself?
Oh, through a Vexo. So with the receipt in, so when you're receiving a product, when you're receiving a container, so we've got a system where you can track the container number and the containments and stuff and say where it is and which on site, etc. But even if you're just picking up a purchase order, you can receive that purchase order. You can have, as a team, effectively, you can have 1 or 2 people unloading the container and registering the product. So you might build a pallet of product A, shrink wrap it, put a sticker on it, a license plate, and scan that license plate. And then someone else comes along with a forklift, scans the license plate, tells them where to put it, goes and puts it away. Right? So scan. That's one option. You can just put it straight in the pig face. But what we like to say at the end is you can receive it in bits. So you can, if you're expecting 3 pallets, you receive pallet 1, and then it'll say you've got 2 pallets remaining, receive pallet 2, etc. And then once you've received it and you've put it away, which we consider as a second check, an optional second check, you can put it straight to the location, as I said. Then we go and create an uncosted goods inwards note in Vexo and send an email or notification to somebody to say, hey, this product's been received by Dave, and these are the customers that are waiting for the products on that order, if that's what you want. We've got a checker to look for back orders in Excel.
That's great. Now, another question here. A client's currently using a similar system, a similar warehouse management system, designed for Vexo. What are the main distinctions that you see between a Vexo and other smaller sort of barcode scanning solutions?
Well, that's a tricky one. The one in question there, I don't. You're in a better position to answer that than I am. I mean, I don't spend a lot of time running through all the functionality of our competitors, and there's a reason. The reason I don't do that is I don't want to be influenced. We've been working in warehousing since 1994. Got ideas, and we like to innovate rather than copy. So I don't really look at our competition, to be fair. The modern technology, I think, is the main thing, right? So we can run Android and iOS. A lot of them choose Android or iOS. We have a single code base. So every single person uses exactly the same code, which allows us to be more stable, I think. And whereas most of them, you have to install it on a particular site. So our cost of setup is very cheap, really, compared to them. And I don't know, really. There's so many different ones. they've all got strengths and weaknesses. It's hard to say, but I would say our platform. We're very proud of the platform. The use of serverless technologies means very well. I'd say no downtime. We haven't been down with this latest version for a second, and I don't think that. I don't think it will go down. It's just that they promise 11 nines of reliability, which is, they said, one database record lost per 100,000 years. So I'm reasonably confident that I won't be around for that.
Maybe just to expand upon that, I think the other thing that we see as a consulting partner is just the ability within Vexo to plan for efficiency and design your warehouse system around the warehouse management system. Quite a number of other sort of barcode scanning type applications don't really deal with these big ticket items such as replenishments, for example, which is really important to get right to ensure that you're increasing efficiency in your warehouse. Doesn't really deal with multiple pack sizes, for example, eaches versus cartons versus pallets. There's things like that Vexo just does bring in terms of that maturity that makes huge differences in terms of warehouse efficienty.
Oh, I've just thought of another transport management. We're seamlessly the version that we've rewritten from our learnings seamlessly does transport and large transport, like vehicle truck management with government reporting, servicing, faults, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jason. If you do have your own fleet of vehicles for deliveries, having a freight management system that's fully integrated into your warehouse management system and your ERP system, of course, is really key. Got another question here from Sarah. What's the reasonable minimum size in terms of the warehouse to consider using a Vexo?
Well, it's not necessarily the size of the warehouse. I mean, you can have a small warehouse, but if you sell, as I mentioned, if you sell pens and paper and nuts and bolts, then you don't need a very large area to have a very large number of SKUs. So it's not about size. It's about efficiency. It's about having less number of steps to get your order to your customer. I mean, getting your stuff in, getting on the right shelf, that's all good stuff. But where you really the real key part of a warehouse management system is the sales side, getting the product out. So if you do sell pens and paper or anything, then pens and pencils, then you go and pick your pens and pencils, and you want to just if you imagine you're walking around with a trolley and you're putting stuff on the trolley, and then you go back to the desk, you really want to put it in the box, close the box, print a sticker, put the sticker on, put it by the door, get the next order and go. So it's not about how far you're walking, it's about how far you're walking around the warehouse or the size of the warehouse. It's about the walking outside of it. You don't have to go to this system to do this and that system to do this. It just all happens in one. That's really, so I don't think
I might just add to that, Jason. I think if you've got sort of 3 or 4 people in the warehouse, or you have got that sort of those issues, that chaos where you're having to extend your customer service team to deal with the issues and inefficiencies in the warehouse, you're probably big enough to consider a warehouse management system. It is something that will grow with you. And in some respects, the sooner you get it in as a smaller organization, it will actually enable you to grow and be more efficient as you grow. So you don't want to wait until you're too large either. I think is
or you don't want to wait
another
until
element to consider.
You wait until if you know you're going to grow, and then you wait until you're growing, then you generally don't have the resources to spare the time to put the effort in, and it'll be, potentially less successful start because nobody's really paid any attention to it because, well, no one's got any time because you can't hire enough staff, you can't get people, you're running behind the 8 ball all the time. So, but it's a balancing act, isn't it? It's difficult. Understand.
Absolutely. All right, fantastic. I think we'll leave it at that for today, Jason. Thank you so much for today's webinar. It was great to hear from you and get some context in terms of how we can improve the efficiency within our warehouses and just the value that the Vexo as a warehouse management system can bring to organizations. Thank you all for attending. Really do appreciate it. We will make today's recording available to all of you as well. Please do reach out via the email or contact numbers on that slide, or just to your account manager. Be more than pleased to continue the conversation with you and do a demonstration of a Vexo for you and your team. Thanks again, Jason.
No problem. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your time, everybody, and the great questions. Appreciate that.